So I found a lawyer that I really, really hate, and he's just made me bring to my attention a case that's kind of been talked about, and I don't know the details. I have not done any details. I've only seen this video. This is all I know about the case, and they show a video of her, being in the living room with dogs and her grabbing a gun and then choosing to deliberately shoot her mum 3 times in the head. I'm assuming in the head. This is definitely a case. You can look at the video and you can say that this is murder with intent. She has gone in there to kill her mum, and for as far as the story has been told, it's over vape. She wanted to vape and her mum said no, and she, out of rage, has gone in there and killed her mum. This is, it's a horrible story, and I think this girl does definitely deserve jail, because killing someone should not be the answer or anything. But this lawyer, he's taking a very one-sided approach, and I don't like how he's accusing this woman of being a stone cold, heartless kind of monster. This child, he's accusing this child of being a stone cold, heartless monster, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I don't know. Maybe she is. Maybe this was just out of nowhere. Maybe this is just a stubborn brat teenager who didn't like what her mum said, and she's just gone in there not thinking and done something very, very stupid. It's horrible to think that she has got 30 years in prison. 30 years is a long... I am 38. So imagine I did something when I was... She's going to be in prison. If she gets 30 years in prison, she's going to be in prison till she's 45. So imagine everything that I've gone through in the last 11 years with me knowing that I'm Christ, and the constant just lying in bed, no life, I really, really sympathize for people that are in jail, because I feel like I'm in a jail. I'm in a room. Okay, it's a nice house and I can actually leave. So if I wanted to, I can leave. I can sunbathe whenever I want. I can go on the internet whenever I want. Like literally, to go a week without the internet would be so hard for me. And so to think that, imagine if I was to be in prison and just have to not have the internet for a whole week, what would I do with my time? I don't know. I mean, the idea of being in prison for a week just sounds so awful, and I've gone through an awful life and I feel like I'm in a prison, but I can go on the internet whenever I want. I feel like maybe someone's put cameras in my house, and I really don't like that, because I don't know if they have or not, and I'm paranoid, and I'm hearing things that are, Britney Spears has this happened to him, and Diddy also put cameras all over his house, so this is making me paranoid as to whether or not if there's someone's putting cameras in my house because I'm Christ and they want to know what I'm doing, it's giving me all sorts of paranoia. It's horrible. But when you're in prison, you probably do have cameras all over the place, and to live like this for such a long time based on some stupid action you did when you were 15. I'm 37. I think I'm 37. I'm 37 now, and I've done a lot since I was 13. That is a very, 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 very long time. And to think that I've got another 7. So if she's going to be in prison until she's 45, all this time, like, think about how old you are, and think about everything you've done in your life, and imagine that was all stripped away from you, and you were locked inside a tiny little room for the whole of your life. Say if you're a 45-year-old and you've been locked up in a prison, in a small room, not allowed to go on the internet, not allowed to have any kind of freedom, forced to be monitored and treated like an animal. This is such a harsh punishment. And this lawyer is just saying how heartless this child is for killing his mum. And I'm actually seeing it from a different perspective. I'm seeing how heartless this lawyer is for not realizing that this child he's probably, I don't know how old he is, he's probably about 45, 50. To think that every single moment of his life was happened because of something stupid you did when you were 15. I think this is terrible. I think she does deserve to go to prison. Because it does look very cold, it does look very calculated, and if her mum, if this was just her mum trying to stop her from taking vape, then it means that she's slightly considerate towards the child, But I would want to know other things. You know, I hear this case and I would want to know what she thought of her mum, why she didn't like her mum. You know, was there anything did she bring home strangers? You know, I know she's got a dad, but that they weren't living together. You know, did she see the mum being violent towards the dad, or has what led up to your your hatred, or your thinking it's okay to kill your mum? You know, I've heard of cases where people say that, oh, you know, I was doing pornography since I was 6 because my mum wanted to make money to feed a drug addiction. Maybe she only got into drugs and vaping because of her mum also doing it, and maybe her mum wanted to take the vape away, but she thought she was going to take the vape away so she can use it for her own self or her own personal use. You know, maybe they were arguing over, you know, who gets this drug. She's got it and the mum says, no, I want it. You know, I don't know the situation, and I'm not saying that is the situation. I'm just saying she's killed her mum with intent, and I want to know why. That this is me not being a monster. This is me taking an interest, and me also thinking that if someone did something stupid like this when they're 15, to think that they, you know, I'm 37, to think that every single thing that I've done in my whole life, I'd spend the whole of my life in a tiny prison cell. These prisons are horrible in America, and to think every day of every minute being in this situation just because of something stupid I did when I was 15, you know, I think that is terrible. I don't think the death sentence is right. I think 12 years is probably a reasonable death sentence. I think it depends on, when it comes to murder, you know, I think it's hugely exaggerated about how awful it is. You've taken someone's life, they're never going to live again, they're never going... I don't believe that. I believe in reincarnation. So I think if someone's wealthy and has a big life and a big career, and they've spent a long time building up their career, then you've taken something away from them, because they can't guarantee that they'll get that back. You know, if they've spent ages buying a big mansion and working really hard to build it, you've taken that away, and okay, it's likely that they'll be given parents of a similar wealth to them. But technically, a baby is born poor. They've lost everything. So you have done something horrible to them. You've taken away their life. You've taken away everything they own. But if the circumstances were different, and if say the house that they were living in wasn't actually owned by anyone, and that they had a massive mortgage, or that it was just paying rent, and if the mother was stressing every day over bills, making the child feel, you know, it might not be necessarily abuse. The mother might have not actually committed abuse on a person. I don't want to make it specific to this case because I don't know the case, but I know in many situations there are kids that might lash out on their parents, and there might be all sorts of reasons why this might happen. It might not be abuse. Maybe the mother has not been abusing the child, but maybe the mother has been calling that child fat or ugly or stupid. You know, there's something about this child that's not particularly attractive, and therefore if a mother was to be very rude about her looks, you know, I can imagine her taking it very seriously. And, you know, I don't know what the relationship is, but if I was dealing with this case, I would want witnesses as to what type of relationship that they had. You know, go to school. Did anyone see the mother? You know, if you go to the school and you ask the kids, did you ever see this mother hit the child, or be unfair towards the child, or was there anything signs that that abuse was happening? You know, I would want to know these sorts of things, and I would only make my decision on how many years this child should get based on the circumstances. And I just kind of want to just show this horrible lawyer that was talking about Diddy the other day.
Your right to appeal, and that waiver will stand unless you give written notice to the court and to your attorney prior.
So he did say life imprisonment, which I don't know if that means, it probably means life imprisonment with the possibility of parole probably after 30 years. That is my guess what the sentence would be. He didn't say life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, but it still means that she's on lifetime supervision. So even though you might get paroled after 30 years, I mean, which means she'd be 45 years old, still very young, still have a chance to have a life, she's still going to be on parole for the rest.
So I just think the way he said that, So she's still, so it's going to be 45, so she's still going to be very young. She's still going to be having a whole life ahead of her. I'm 37 and I do not feel like I've got my whole life ahead of me. I feel like my life has been stolen. I feel hugely angry. This makes me feel angry because I feel like I've been living in a prison all my life. But technically my house and my environment is so much better than what an actual prison would be like. And how he could just be so, 45, yeah. So she'll come out of it in 45 and but it's fine because she'll still be on parole. You know, she's still going to be monitored. She's still going to be this. And he's acting like this is a good thing. Her being in prison until she's 45. It's only 45 years. I don't care. And it angers me because this child was 15. 15. Okay, I wouldn't say her brain is undeveloped. This is what the guy said earlier on. He says, you know, her brain's still not developed. No, I think it is developed, and I think she is quite mature, and I think she knew what she was doing, and I think she wanted to kill her mother. But people don't want to kill their mother for no reason. You know, I don't know what her circumstances is, but I know that the Matrix gives children to parents who are similar to them, and maybe her parents weren't great parents. Maybe they were abusive. Maybe she saw her father being abusive towards her mother, and her father actually came forward and testified and was supporting of her. But maybe, you know, if she's gone through a childhood or an upbringing where the father has been beating up the mother and treating the mother badly, and the mother has finally got away, you know, this might actually have an effect on a child, and it might make a person far more violent than they want to be, because they look up to their dad, and if they worship their dad and see their dad as being good, and maybe if their dad was violent, you know, I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm not talking about this case. I do not know about this case, but I know that there are all sorts of circumstances which could lead up to a child hurting her mother, and to just be like, oh, she's going to be in prison, but she'll come out in 45 when she's 45. You know, that's fine. Like, I feel like he is accusing her of having no heart and being very, very cold, whereas I would say that he is the one who's being very, very heartless and very, very cold, because he's not asking, throughout the whole of this video, he's not asking anything about why this happened, what type of childhood did this child have, and, you know, and because of this is supposed to be a lawyer. You know, who is dealing with these cases? Who is dealing with all these criminal cases? Because if it's people like this who are dealing with it, then I don't trust anything. This guy has no interest in wanting to know the perpetrator's circumstances, what they were led. You know, if you're constantly seeing your father hit your mother, you might too start hitting your mother. And if, say, you hit your mother and she falls and cracks her head on marble, you know, you could say that child is a monster, or you could say that child is just copying what someone else around is doing. And you could say the victim is a victim, but if the victim, say, was a drug addict, was struggling to pay bills, was constantly insulting the child and saying stuff, you know, it might not be abuse. You know, in this, he goes on to talk
the
about
rest of her life.
another
Regardless.
case.
She won't be free to move around. She won't be free to move out of state. She won't be free to do anything. But I have an issue.
He's almost like, I don't care. She won't be able to move around. She won't be able to do anything. She won't be able to. It's almost like I think he's narcissistic. This is a very narcissistic lawyer, and I think almost a part of him enjoys the fact that some 15-year-old is going to be trapped and imprisoned for the rest of her life. I feel that from him. I do not like this guy at all.
A little bit with somebody this young, you know, certainly with the death penalty. I mean, we've outlawed that for minors.
So he's taken a little bit of compassion and saying not the death penalty. You know what? I think the death penalty, if you're going to be in prison for this long of a time, I think the death penalty is a much better crime. Kill yourself, go get yourself a new body, or spend the rest of your life being in prison, being known as the person who murdered your mother. You know, just the fact that you've murdered your mother is going to always plague your mind. It's going to curse your life for the whole of your life. This person has damned herself, and therefore to think that she deserves to go into prison for 30 years, even though it is a terrible crime. But maybe there's some, you know, maybe there's nothing wrong. Maybe there's nothing in her childhood. Maybe there is no abuse or bad upbringing, and therefore maybe 20 years is a fair assessment. I don't know, but I don't like how this guy does not know, and yet he's acting like the cocky one. I do know because I've done it, and it's horrible. It's horrible to see.
Minors. But do we want to put somebody in prison for the rest of her life? I mean, she's clearly a cold-hearted beast of a killer. I mean,
I think he's clearly a cold-hearted shithead that doesn't care about anyone else.
there's no question in my mind about
There's
that.
no question about
can
my
anybody
mind.
argue with that?
I mean, can you argue
I'd
that
say
this
is
guy's
a lot
nice?
different than the Gypsy Rose situation where she had that with Munchausen syndrome where her mother was making her pretend to be sick and she had to kind of escape to kill her mom. You know, it's kind of a different case than
Right.
that.
In that case, Gypsy, but what did her boyfriend get?
Oh, life.
He got life and she got 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
Oh, they're divorced, by the way.
well, that was her. No, that was she divorced the fat guy that she was.
I don't really know what this gypsy. I think I remember hearing a case, although I'm sure it was a film, where some mother was poisoning her child to keep her child ill, so that she could continue looking after the child and keeping the child bedbound so that she can kind of monitor a day. I mean, that's a horrible, horrible thing. And if the child was to kill the mother in those circumstances, I don't think that I don't think any death penalty is needed or any sentence. You know, if you kill someone who has been abusing you all your life, then you are abuser. Now, to me, putting someone in prison because they are raped is a very similar thing to putting someone in prison because they have murdered someone who has been making them ill all their life. If I don't know what he just said, but it sounded like someone. Maybe it was the mother. Maybe that's what he was saying. I don't know what this case was that he just said, but it sounded like someone went to prison for 8 years and the partner went to prison for life. And I think it's different. If an adult is drugging and abusing a child, I think that's very different because you're completely taking advantage of your power and your state. If it is a child who's done something against an adult, children do things for a reason, and if the mother's only failure is to bring up her child properly, she needs to take a little bit of responsibility for making a child like this, and I know that sounds horrible because it's the child that's done it, but children don't act like this normally. So obviously there's a breakdown in the family or a failure in the family and on the mother's part. And for this reason, I feel like the sentence of, life, which I would say is 12 years, maybe should be less than 12 years because of something like this. And, she's not going to come out of prison being like, okay, I can live my life now, because she's always going to have to know that she doesn't have a mum and her father probably doesn't like her because of this. She's always going to have to live this. Or maybe the father even wanted the mother to die and secretly wanted it. He's not going to say that in court because he doesn't want to put himself in an incriminating position. But I don't know the situation, but I know that there are and can be or might be circumstances that would do this. And therefore, to see a lawyer just take sides and just think that, they'll be out in 45 years. They'll be out when they're 45. They'll still have plenty of their life left. I just think it's so cold to how awful it would be to be in a prison for such a long time.
Yeah, then you.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all. We did an episode on that, and but that raises a good point. That's a mitigating factor when you're a victim and all of a sudden you take out your abuser. I don't think we have that in this case. If there certainly would have been some testimony about the abuse she suffered. I mean, the fact that mom wanted to take her vape pens is not abuse.
It's like, I don't think that was in the case. I mean, there's nothing about that in the case, even though I've just read. I don't know. I don't trust people. And I think if people want to take a side, it would be very easy to not include someone's testimony on why they did it. Or if they don't think it's like this guy seems like the type of person. This guy seems like the type of person who would take sides, and I can imagine if he's defending someone, but thinks that person is guilty, I think he might want to dull down their excuse or their thing. I think court cases, if they have people, you need to have both sides of the story. And if you're not showing both sides of the story, this person says that I did this for this reason. And if you've read the reasons why they think they did it, and then you think this is a terrible excuse, this is obviously bullshit. If you've actually analysed it and said this is the defence position, and I don't believe it because I've read the defence position and that's it. Whereas this guy hasn't actually read the defence position. He's just saying because it's not there, I'm assuming there is no defence position and that she's just a cold-hearted monster. And he's just kind of like jumped to a conclusion. And I think if it's just a normal person doing this, then fine. But the fact that this is supposed to be a lawyer who's doing this, how many other lawyers would just jump to conclusions and just assume things that haven't been said and just assume, oh, she's a good mother because she was trying to stop her child from vaping. What happens if the reason why she was trying to stop her child from vaping is because she wanted the vape to use for herself because she ran out of her stash and she couldn't be bothered to go down to the shop? You don't know the details in this. And if this report is biased and one-sided, it is going to be wrong. And I don't trust people. I don't trust people to make good decisions when it comes to this. And I would love a world where if prisons, where prisons will be different, like a chicken farm where you have all the little huts, and I would have a prison kind of like a little village where, okay, you can't go on the internet, but you can watch films and you can make stuff, where you get access to arts and craft or bakery and stuff, and you can actually make things to sell to the public. If there's, everyone loves cakes, you can make quite a good amount of money on cakes. So if the prisons can offer cake ingredients and then have the prisoners make cakes to sell them, I think you would need to put cameras on just in case people are spitting in them. If they're full of horrible people that are angry about being put in prison, then they might be tempted to spit in the food. So food might not be the best option if the prisoners are untrustworthy. But there are plenty of things, I could say woodwork and stuff, but then they might need weapons and tools which they might use to hurt each other. So, but I'm sure there are lots of jobs that can be used to make things, arts and crafts, knitting or sewing or clothes making. Providing, if you have cells where you can actually do things, make things, become a useful member of society, and that way when they leave the prison, they'll leave with more skills than they had when they come in. So I would love to see prisons be a place where you actually keep people in isolation for a time and you teach them skills on how they can leave the prison and go on to do more and be better.
It's just common sense.
Alright, so this is Dave Chappelle. How old is 15 really? He compares, it's actually really kind of digs in philosophically to that question. How old is 15 really?
So, to kind of highlight what we're talking about here, how old is 15 really? This community activist, who is one of the most brilliant minds ever.
Oh, actually, I wanted to say something about that.
Deliberation.
She was making her pretend to be sick.
Depends. Is not abuse. It's just common sense.
Alright, so this is Dave Chappelle. How old is 15 really? He compares...
Okay, I just want to show this
To
clip.
speak on the subject. Let's hear what he has to say.
I just want to...
Here, how old is...
So I just wanted to make a point. This guy promotes this other guy as being, someone who has... You'll look at it, but he gives him a really good intro.
15 really? This community activist, who is one of the most brilliant minds ever to speak on the subject. Let's hear what he has to say.
Even peed on this girl or not, you're not asking yourself the real question that America needs to decide once and for all. And that question is...
I just think that's so funny. He just said that this is one of the most brilliant minds that there is. And he turns to a pit where a part in this comedy sketch where he's saying a girl peed on. I don't know what he was saying, but he's talking not like an intelligent mind, he's talking like a comedian that's just a comedy joke.
Is how old is 15 really?
How old is 15 really?
I'm not saying that a person is as smart as they're going to be at 15. That's not what I'm saying, man. But I am saying 15 to me is old enough to decide whether or not you want to be pissed on. I mean, that's me.
I have no idea why he just showed that clip, but I feel like this really does show his mental state. This is a lawyer who just called that comedian one of the greatest minds and an activist, and it really is like, what? That is a lawyer who's promoting this guy. I mean, if you can promote someone like that and say, talk about how a 15-year-old has enough intelligence to work out whether she not wants to be pissed on or not. No, you shouldn't piss on 15-year-olds. Why? Because you will probably convince them to like something, and then when they get to 20, 30, they'll be like, why the fuck did I agree to that? That was absolutely stupid. 15-year-olds make stupid mistakes, and by peeing on someone when they're 15, you could probably actually change their sort of mental perspective on what they think is right and what's wrong, and that comedian was supporting that, basically. And I have no idea why this lawyer just brought out that random clip, but it's hilarious because I think it's a testimony to how stupid this lawyer is to say things like this. I want to show the clip where...
So I'll just let the whole thing play. It's only a minute. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. Mom's dead at this point. Concealing the firearm. You see her concealing the firearm? It's behind her back. She knows the camera's there. Why she didn't drape something over the camera is beyond me. So then she texts her father. Says, when are you coming home, honey?
You know, that video shows that it was intent. That video shows that it was murder with intent, and afterwards, I don't know why she was hiding it, but it shows what she did and what happened, and you know that she's, the perpetrator. But what it doesn't show is any abuse that led up to this. It doesn't show how the relationship was between her and her mum. It doesn't show, he's looking at this and he's just thinking that this is a whole cold-hearted monster because this is what the video shows. And it's the same with the Diddy case. It reminds me of the Diddy case. You've got a video clip of Diddy hitting Cassie, and if that is a true thing, then it's terrible, and it's not how you should react, and it's bad, and maybe you should go to jail for a couple of months for it. But what the video doesn't show is what happened before, all the stuff that built up to this, and to think that someone like him, a lawyer, could actually just look at this video footage and only analyze the video footage for the video footage, it's you could have a whole lifetime where you really hate someone and really, maybe they've beat you, maybe they've hurt you, and if all you're going to do is look at the evidence based on a 1-minute video clip. And he focuses a lot on this video clip and says that this is kind of the evidence, and it's not the truth. It's you cannot just base evidence on one thing, and it's the same with the Diddy case. That video of the hotel room. You don't know what was said, you don't know what was mounted to it. He probably was on drugs, and if someone is on drugs, then they might react in this kind of way. This is an excuse why someone should not be on drugs or why they should get off drugs, but it does not prove that they are like this with their partner throughout the whole life. There might have been circumstances that led up to this, and I just want to say all of that, really.